Spooky tea, anyone? I guess I will start with who I am and the reason for this entry. My name is Morris Ivanov, and I am a hunter. Not the usual deer hunter or big game hunter. I hunt things that hunt you. I'm part of a secret organization that deals with these sorts of creatures. We operate beyond the boundaries of government and nation. All the world leaders know about our existence and help us if we need men, guns, or resources. We are the top dogs in the chain of command, as our focus is protecting mankind, and no political bullshit stands in our way. Now that you have a rough idea of who I am and what I do, let me tell you why I'm writing this. A few weeks ago, the organization was contacted by the NHI, Non-Human Informant. Some idiot failed to answer the Sphinx's riddle, and was about to get eaten when the NHI ate the Sphinx. Of course, the Sphinx community was pissed and wanted revenge, so I was called in to solve the problem. I got the case file, which said the following. Case file 325. Endangered individual race, human. Endangered individual name, Jake Smith. Danger, Sphinx. NHI, individual race, hellhound. NHI, individual name, Bral. Special resources, fermented apple-infused alcohol. You are to travel to CO219 and assist Mr. Jake when the threat arrives. Your equipment is packed in Vehicle 21. Cover CO219 worker. Deadly force authorized. After reading the file, I was in a pretty good mood. CO, Cursed Object 219, was the Orang Medan, on which I worked before being promoted to a field agent. The NHI was Bral, an old friend of mine. Besides, sphinxes are easy to kill. So this was a simple job. How foolish I was to think that. Upon arrival, I took my cover and met Jake. A very pleasant guy to be around. Even Bral took a liking to him, and that is very hard to get from a hellhound. I exchanged some words with Bral and prepared Jake for what was coming. I gave him an MP5, 2 pistols and a knife, while I took my trusty AK. He drank the infused alcohol and reacted better to the foul taste than I expected. The Sphinxes came, and after a rather tedious threat from the Mother Sphinx, we started to shoot them. Jake was reacting better than I thought. In our fight, we didn't realize Oliver had appeared, and Jake, in his idiocy, shot at him. Of course, this just enraged Oliver, but instead of ripping Jake to shreds, he vanished. I thought that was the end of it and left, rather happy that I had completed my mission. A week after that, my boss told me that Jake had disappeared and that they had registered another soul bound in the engine room. Oliver vanished because he had something worse than death planned for Jake. After all, he is the demon of cruelty. Our organization prides itself on saving mankind, so you can imagine that Jake's curse stomped on my morale. Now that the depressing stuff is over with, let me tell you how I became a monster hunter. I wasn't always part of the organization. I was born in Alaska, near Prudhoe Bay, and my dad was a hunter by trade. Our income consisted of selling meat and fur from the animals he would hunt. It wasn't luxurious, but I liked it, and it was enough to get by on. My dad and I would often go hunting together. Just me, him, our rifles, and gear. I had my trusty 4570, and he had his beloved Mosin. Our supplies consisted of a tent, sleeping bags, ammo, rifles, and some other survival gear and supplies on a sled. When we would kill something, the one that got the shot would carry the kill onto the sled, while the other carried all the gear. It was rough, but kind of like a game, so it was fun. My 15-year-old heart got filled with happiness and joy whenever I would catch something, knowing that I had just gotten us some food for the next 3 or 4 months, or that I had scored around $300. The money would differ depending on the animal and the use people had for it. A wolf was about $150, but often we would sell around 3 or 4 of them at once, as they live in packs. A moose was about $250 to $500, depending on the antlers, pelt, and amount of meat. Now bears were the most profitable, but also the most dangerous to kill. A bear would range from $1,000 to $5,000, but the price was well justified. It was a rather dangerous endeavor taking down a bear. You had to use at least 2 or 3 bullets before it would go down, if you were lucky. I didn't give you these prices just to brag or tell you that you should go hunting. I gave them to you as a comparison to the bear, and to put into perspective how rather hard it is to kill a bear. Now, you can imagine our fear when we found a bear disemboweled in the forest. That poor thing was torn to shreds, every bone inside its body broken to pieces. The trees around the bear were full of fur and blood, entrails hanging from bushes. It looked like a horror movie. The bear had been smashed into every tree, almost like it was flung around by a tornado. A 700-pound bear thrown around like a rag doll. What could have done this? My father and I looked at each other in fear, but I could see something else in his eyes. He was afraid, but not like I was. He had a look of primordial fear, dread even. He knew what had caused this. He whispered to me that we needed to move away from the bear and go start a fire, a big one, now, and that it needed to last the whole night. As the sun was setting, we could hear screeching coming from the woods all around us. When the night came, we lit the fire and stood very close to it. I asked my father what was hunting us. He stared at me for quite some time with an intense look on his face, not saying a word, slowly pulling closer to my ear, feeling his breath on my face. He whispered, "Wendigo." Somehow that word, without even knowing its true meaning, shook me to my core. From his pack, he took 2 small bundles of bullets I had never seen before. I loaded them into my gun and asked him what they were. The answer was again a quiet whisper, "Silver bullets." I instantly thought about the werewolf movies that I had watched when I was a kid. My train of thought was interrupted by a scream for help coming from the forest. Then another and another. But the screams were strange. Each scream sounded the same. It was absolutely identical. The tone, the pitch, the volume, everything. It was like a recording playing from the woods. I looked at my father, and he said to me in a firm voice, "Don't move. It's here." I did as I was told, but from my peripheral view, I saw something move. I aimed and took a shot, the gunshot being followed by an inhuman scream. It was so high-pitched that it almost burst my ears. My father threw a hook at it and dragged the vile creature back towards us. It had grey skin covering its slender body, and its eyes were a radiant green. My father took his knife and carved out its heart. He then chopped up the body into pieces with a hatchet and threw its remains into the fire. At that moment, the fire got intensely brighter, like it was being fed with gasoline. All of a sudden, I could see around us at least a dozen of those things in a circle. Even if we hit every shot, we didn't have enough bullets. Luckily, as the fire got brighter from burning on that Wendigo's body, they seemed to stay put. The night was horrible and long, the silence of the woods being broken by the occasional scream for help or high-pitched screeches. It was a night that still haunts me to this day. When the morning finally came and no more monsters were in view, we made it back to the Jeep and eventually back to the house. Dad made a call. Shortly after, a few black Jeeps came and took my dad to the forest. They returned a while later to drop my dad back, but in the trunks of their Jeeps, I could see around 20 silver boxes the size of a shoebox. That was the first of many hunts that were to follow. I'll speak to you again soon. Stay safe and keep your fire bright, okay?